Alrighty, welcome to episode 6 of the Rocket Science Podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Tyler Longraj of Prevail Performance. And we cover a few different topics. We start off just talking about our recent growth as coaches and what we've kind of been up to, just talking about national meets, some of the local meets and whatnot we've been attending recently, just kind of what has been going on with our business. As well as Tyler has recently launched his own brand, Prevail Performance. So we kind of discussed that as well. After that, we got into programming accessories, and we really talked about this for a while. We covered quite a bit. We really dove into how to kind of structure the accessory programming, how to kind of set things up to get the most out of it, as well as how all accessories aren't created equal, and there really are different goals when writing accessory movements, and how that's going to kind of dictate the way you program certain things. After that, we just dove into some of our thoughts of how to kind of improve efficiency and workout duration to kind of shorten things up for people who are pressed for time. So those of you who maybe don't have a whole lot of time to be in the gym every single week, we kind of talked about different ways to kind of structure things, whether it's programming, whether it's warm-ups, or just the way you kind of progress through your workout, and how we can kind of make those a little bit quicker, more efficient for those who just don't have a whole lot of time to be in the gym. So if you enjoyed this video, or this episode rather, let me know. This podcast is both on Spotify and YouTube, so that we have 2 locations of that. And Tyler's information is going to be in the description below, so both his Instagram for his personal page as well as his coaching page. Alrighty, how's it going?
Good, good. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah. So we'll start off with growth as coaches. I know your roster is growing very quickly. So we'll kind of start there. I know you just kind of came off of CNATs. So what have you been up to kind of into CNATs and post CNATs? How was CNATs for you?
Yeah, CNAS was really fun. I had 2 athletes there. One guy placed fourth, the one girl PR the total and had her first 9 for 9 meet. So I was extremely happy about that. But after CNATs, it's been a little slow, honestly. I had 2 inquiries after CNATs initially, like that first week or two. After that, it's been pretty dry. But I've been just trying to really expand the business and just because the brand Prevail is so new, I started it in March. I'm just trying to grow it, just grow the reputation and stuff like that. But so far, so good. I think things are picking up, and then I know you're picking up as well. So
Yeah, as I say, you like very recently um announced the whole new brand switch and all that. Got the teas and all that going. So that's always exciting. I remember when I started like Rocket, and that was like it was like a panic. I wanted to just make t-shirts, and they're like, okay, here's the artwork, we can make the shirts. And I was like, oh shit, like I had nothing planned out. So I had to like I had an Instagram account, but it was privated, and like I had nothing really put together. So I was like, just put it all together in like an hour. Like the announcement and everything, obviously. Um, I had, I don't know if I had LLC technically, but no, I didn't. But yeah, I just, put it all together. So it seemed like you had it a little more planned out than me in those initial stages because you took a few days on it, right?
yeah, I wasn't any bad blood leaving the old team I was on. I still have a lot of love and respect
Yeah.
for all the coaches. It was just I just wanted to grow myself a little bit more. So
Mm.
I started thinking about it for a little bit and then just kind of business plans, especially because I have a business background. I just wanted to see what I could do for myself and then try to grow without forcing other people to do things I don't want to do and things like that. I
Mhm.
feel like you and I are in a pretty similar spot when it comes to our brand and business and roster size and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy the business side of it, like just the kind of the marketing and stuff, and I've really started to push that. It seems like you have too, or like the YouTube videos, the info posts, that kind of stuff. So obviously we're on the podcast. So um seeing that you had 2 clients. Do you have anyone doing raw nats?
No, I don't have anybody doing raw nats, unfortunately. I only had 2 guys that could qualify, but I think they're not going just due to not having the funds to travel,
Hmm.
which is fair. It's completely understandable, but should be. I wanted to go. It's also a bad time for me because for
Yeah.
my job, I can't ask off during the week that week. But I think next year, hopefully, I'll be able to get out and try to just be outside more. Just want to be at more big meets, just more meets in general, even locally, just to expand, show the face around, just get people knowing who I am and just build connections and things like that, which has been huge for me ever since joining the council. Just talking to all you guys, I've learned so much too.
Dude, it's something about also being like surrounded by people who want the same thing as you, but are like in a similar boat. Like the way I look at everyone is like I feel like everyone's like like a step above me. So it or like a step, I guess, further than me in terms of like roster growth and all that. Or just like uh, just how long they've been coaching. Like Eric's been at it for years now. Like I don't know how long he's been full time, but he's been at it like pretty substantially for a while. So like having someone who's not like that, obviously S tier coach who's just been around forever, but like has someone who's still hungry, but like a little bit ahead of you, and then you kind of have someone to kind of chase after a little bit in a sense. But yeah, the whole networking in that sense is like huge. That's been massive for me. And yeah, I'm glad they put you in. Devin recommended you because I didn't really know you, and Devin recommended you. And then we had like you and me had one conversation or two conversations in the DMs, and I was like, yeah, we got to get him in. We got to get him in. So it's kind of
Yeah, I
awesome.
remember DMing you a couple times because I knew we were teammates, and I was like, I was still trying to like get my feet wet. And I was like, let me just ask a couple questions because I've seen all of y'all make posts, and I was like, let's just ask. Like, they can't say anything bad without asking a
Yeah.
question. So, and then it's been really nice too because obviously I talked to you, and then I've been handling for a couple people in the group chat, like Chris and Andy. It's been a good experience so far. Just having the trust for other people, especially across the US.
Do they have clients down in Texas that needed handles?
Yeah, Andy had one last year, and the same client is doing another meet here in like 3 weeks, and I'm going to handle again for the same client for Andy. And then I had one, I think last month or 2 months ago,
Hmm.
for Chris. It was like high school nets. It also actually could have been 2024. Time is just kind of flying. So,
Hmm.
but it's pretty good so far.
Yeah, no, I don't get the opportunity to handle for people because usually, like in my area, everyone either has like a coach or, everyone's coach is local, so that there's just not a need for handlers or anything. But like when I went to CNATS and helped handle for Devin, like that was super fun. And just good reps and whatever, you know what I mean? And uh I guess I don't want to say like another set of eyes on the um meat prep stuff, but like just being able to kind of see how Devin operates a little bit, I think was helpful too. Um so yeah, we'll get into accessories because this is the one I think we're gonna really like talk about for a while because I have a lot
Yeah.
of thoughts and I've never talked about accessories really. Um like programming wise, I don't think ever. Which I want to do kind of an info post on, I think soon. But so are you're coached by Devin, obviously. So are you pilled in the sense of you like to do the all the AMRAPs and all the
Yeah, I'm a
stuff?
big fan of it, honestly. It's because it depends. It's very lifter dependent, obviously, but there are some lifters I know that might quote unquote sandbag their accessory.
Yeah.
So I would love to do the AMRAP for them, and then I'll put in the program, send me the video of this AMRAP, so I know they're pushing that set. And at the very least, if in the back of my head they're kind of lifted to sandbag the accessories, I see them pushing that one set to like absolute failure, just so I know they're pushing a little bit. Obviously, there's some people I know who love their accessories, but it's just been a really good tool for me just to get people bigger without overly fatiguing them as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I think I started doing this maybe like right before working with Devin, but definitely like way more after, like right after starting with him. But basically around that time I started working there, I really started to like be a little bit more intentional with my accessory programming instead of writing like just 3x8 at 8, right? Like really
Yeah.
giving. Well, I described it to a client one time as I'm writing this in a manner that's kind of confusing to read. Like you have to look at your sheet and read it because then you're more likely to like think about it and then actually do it to the proper intensity. Like if I give you, a set of 6 to 8 RP9 and then a set of 10 to 12 at RP8 and then an AMRAP with a repeat load to RP9, like you're gonna think about each one of those. You're gonna think about the load that you should use. You're gonna think about the intensity of that. So like I almost intentionally will make it a little bit confusing. And like even go slightly overboard with that just so that people are more likely to kind of um
you know, execute it the way I want. Not to say I don't ever do straight sets or anything like that. I like to do a lot of straight sets with some like the lower priority stuff, or if I'm doing just like two sets to like a low to moderate RPE, obviously, but like a lot of the hypertrophy focused accessories, like we're really looking to push. Kind of writing it in a manner that's like confusing has been really big. So I wanted to kind of go over the different goals of accessories. So I kind of think about it in three ways, and there might be more. But the way I think about it is like you've got like your muscle building, hypertrophy focused exercises. You've got your movement pattern and quality or like movement teaching exercises. And then you've got your additional workload, kind of just filling the gap a little bit and getting a little bit of additional volume, but you're not necessarily, it's not in the program to build muscle. It's not in the program to induce a ton of like stress or anything like that. It's just kind of there to kind of fill that gap. So, like some different ones that come to mind for me would be like for the muscle building accessories, I think of okay, this is my and some of these can be both, obviously, but like this is definitely specifically like your arm work, like your bicep work, your delt work, your lats and upper back. Those are the ones that like probably are always going to fall into this category for the most part. Um, and then you could also kind of group in there like something like a chest press or leg extension, just anything that we're really pushing hard. Um, I think that can kind of go hand in hand with that a little bit is filling the gap of the comp lifts, where we might have something like a weighted dip or a dumbbell press or something like that, where we are trying to build muscle, but it also is providing that like direct stimulus for the comp lift. And then movement pattern and quality, I think, can also go hand in hand with the comp lift or filling the gap category, where the movement pattern exercises, I think of like RDL. Um, RDL is really the big one that comes to mind that we're like kind of putting in the program to really teach or maintain that like hinge skill practice. I think of like something like a chest press that or maybe like a dumbbell press where I'm intentionally having someone really like flare the elbows out for people who like have a bad habit of over tucking. I think is a good one too. But those are the kind of the three I think of, and I think one more you could add a fourth one would be like health. It's kind of in there to maintain joint health or whatever. So I don't know if you think of things that way or kind of I guess what your thoughts are with that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm on the same boat with you there. There are a couple of different uses for accessories that I've been implementing recently, actually, and I found it really successful. I'm not sure if you've ever done this, but what I've done before, or what I've been doing recently, right, is say this person has a secondary squat day. They have a comp squat, like a low bar, then some low bar back downs, and then they come in feeling on their primary day super poppy on the whole. The legs feel great, but the back is a little bit more fatigued than we would like. What I've done is have that one or two sets of low bar squat on a secondary day, and then replace the back downs with a belt squat just to mitigate like the lower back being overly fatigued and then keep the legs as poppy as possible. And then I've kind of done the same thing with bench, right? Like I do like a comp bench with dumbbell bench back downs, and it's been super, super successful recently, depending on the person, right? But I've been really enjoying that so far, especially if I'm adding like a fourth bench day. What I'll do for that fourth bench day is have that one or two sets of bench and then have dumbbell bench as their quote unquote back off sets, just to provide the stimulus. And that's been really, really nice in that sense as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think this also kind of goes hand in hand with like switching variations mid workout where like Steve had a post on this that really like kind of blew up a while back where you have someone do low bar squat like to kind of kick things off in the workout, maybe to do one or two low bar sets, top set, whatever. And then the back down, might be SSB. The back down might be high bar or like you said, belt squat. And in my most recent info post was kind of covering like high bar and how I like to use it so much for back down sets kind of within my system just to save the upper body specifically. Um, but yeah, I think a good example of like the filling the gap accessories is something like a belt squat where someone has squat workload programmed and then maybe we need to add a little bit more additional workload in some capacity, right? Like maybe we feel okay, things are stale or maybe they're coming in flat. We need a little bit more workload, but we know the low back like cannot handle um more than what we already kind of have programmed in. Instead of adding squat workload, we can just throw in some belt squat and kind of get that additional lower body stimulus, especially like belt squats just so specific to the comp squat. So that's a really good option as well. Kind of like you said, kind of just filling that gap in.
Yeah, I completely agree. And kind of to piggyback off what you were saying earlier with like movement patterns, with the RDLs going into like deadlift days. Well, this is pretty common already, but I am a pretty big fan of just doing 1 day of deadlifting. If you're a conventional puller off the floor and having that secondary day, just practicing the hinge with the RDL, just pushing that. Because I found that with that hinge practice, you're coming into that conventional day with a slightly better hinge coming into the setup, and things just feel a lot better without overly fatigued. And obviously, as time goes on, you can add that secondary pulling day off the floor, but that's been super successful. But one thing I wanted to ask you too, Bert, what do you prefer, RDL or SLDL? Because I know people have like their own preference and like what to use in specific areas.
I like RDL. I'm very RDL pilled. Um, Especially for like conventional pullers. I do have one guy doing SLDL right now, as like an accessory movement on his uh secondary sumo day. He pulls sumo. Just as Sean Noriega talked about this recently, and it kind of opened my eyes to this a little bit. But like the stiff leg deadlift's really, really good at promoting like upper back extension. And with this person, we were just kind of having issues with that. I don't think it's really a strength thing, just more of a movement pattern thing. So I've been giving it to him on the back downs. Um, I gave stiff leg deadlift to someone a little while ago. I think I gave it to my client Sean. I'm trying to remember. It was a while, like 4 or 5 months ago. I think I gave it to him for like our first block together to so he had an issue with dumping the pelvis really hard on sumo. So we spent like block one just like really hammering technique. And I gave it to him. Andrew recommended me kind of give it to him. And I think it just built that like low back pelvis awareness of like where he was in space and what he was doing. And then we've since taken it out. We're pulling sumo twice a week. But um, yeah, I had him doing that like and pushing it a good amount. But otherwise, I like the RDL a lot. Not that I think the stiff leg deadlift's like bad per se. I think RDL is maybe a bit better from a hypertrophy standpoint because you do have a little bit of an eccentric as well. Um, but yeah, like my conventional, I probably have like RDL in the program for 90% of my clients. Um, Even if it not everyone's RDL is the same, right? Some people are really pushing it. We're really trying to get a lot of heavier RDL in. Maybe we're using a bell and a barbell and strapping up. But some people are just doing like dumbbell RDL for a few sets. So yeah, I think it's I like the RDL. I don't know where your mindset's on that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I actually only have one guy doing the SLDL, kind of for the exact same reason that you mentioned, just trying to have them build body awareness, right? And that's one thing I enjoy with like certain accessories. I think a lot of accessories, obviously, you're going to be building muscle with hypertrophy, but I also think those accessories can help build body awareness to translate into the compound lifts.
Mhm.
Like you said, with like your athletes, like pelvis being super tucked whenever they wedge. That's one thing that a lot of people do that they don't know that they do. And certain accessory movements help them feel their body, know what things are moving. That's kind of one thing I will program an accessory for. Initially, maybe just to learn how their body moves, how what to feel, what to know. And then as they get more comfortable with that, we'll start pushing it more for strength purposes and things like that.
Yeah, I think the RDLs and like the stiff leg deadlift are unique in that sense because like the hinge pattern is something that's so I think just generally important to be able to do, especially for a deadlift as well as like some squat or and whatnot. But like I think it's challenging for a lot of people to do because a lot of people don't have that awareness of what is the pelvis doing. Like, is my pelvis in anterior tilt? Is my pelvis in posterior tilt? Again, like obviously there's pros and there it's not always a bad thing to be biased into one or the other, but like what I've noticed is a lot of people tend to bias to one or the other. You'll have the people who are pelvis is way tipped back always, no matter what, they're trying to get very extended. And you'll have the opposite where people are pelvis is way rolled under, and then That's something they bias to with both squat and deadlift. But I think building that awareness, okay, what is the pelvis doing? Learning the hip hinge movement. That's one that really comes to mind. I don't, there are some other exercises that I think fill that gap of like or kind of fill the thought process of like, okay, this is a movement quality building exercise. But I don't find the need to really program them much. Like one that comes to mind for like a squat, like I had a client who super new to training. She had never really squatted before, like at all. So like we were really building from the ground up, and like we didn't even get her under a barbell for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And we were spending a lot of time with like goblet squats, things of that nature. So I think there are some of those exercises, but I think just by the nature of the fact that we work with powerlifters for the most part, competitive powerlifters, they probably spent some time doing squatting, benching, and deadlifting that they probably don't necessarily need. They're not going to need a goblet squat to kind of teach the squat pattern like someone who's like a personal training client, super new. This would be an interesting conversation to have with Madison because he does a lot of personal training and in-person stuff. So he would probably be able to give a lot better insight than the two of us can maybe. But yeah, I mean that's another one that comes to mind. But like the RDL specifically, the stiff leg deadlift, like I think that's the one that's commonly we're kind of writing for powerlifters.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one thing that I think you mentioned before, you mentioned a little hot take about accessory
I was
programming.
gonna bring it up.
So, what was that exactly?
So well, we'll get to that. So I think the other thing to kind of talk about with accessories is I think it's more commonly people have started talking about, obviously push your accessories, push your accessories, push your accessories. But I don't think that's like a blanketed statement you can just say about every movement. Because obviously if the goal is to build muscle, we probably need to be training to RP 8, 9, 10, failure even. We need to be training hard, right? Um, so like, anything where we're really trying to build muscle or we're trying to induce a lot of stress, think like maybe a weighted dip on a primary bench day or like a dumbbell press or maybe like a leg press on a primary squat or even the secondary squat or whatever the case may be. But with those movement pattern and quality exercises, probably don't need to be pushing the intensity super hard. Like with something like, if I'm really trying to teach a hinge and I'm giving someone like maybe like a toe elevated, like dumbbell RDL, I'm probably not pushing that to like RP 10. That's just going to get sloppy. Having someone strap up to the heaviest dumbbells they can pick up and then try to do like some RDLs with that. So I don't think that's a one size fits all approach. Like one that comes to mind is I'm not a huge fan of like a whole lot of direct overhead work. Like not to say it's bad, I just don't think I think we spend so much time bench pressing and there's so much bench press volume in the program that like there's just probably not room for a whole lot of quality like overhead work as well because we're benching, we're doing, your direct pressing work, right? Horizontal pressing work. So like your dumbbell press or whatever, machine chest press, dips, kind of not really horizontal, but I think it gets tough to really like find ways to put like dumbbell overhead press or barbell overhead press or any sort of machine overhead for a lot of people just because there's just not time to fit it in or the recovery variables. But I have a client who he just generally gets kind of beat up in the upper back, in the shoulders. And we found like from a shoulder and upper back health standpoint, doing some dumbbell overhead press on like his tertiary bench day, just kind of to split the week up, has been really helpful. Like as an accessory, it's not he does benching on that day as well, but that movement, like I'm not making him go RB9. Like that's just would probably take away from the bench press and what it, it's probably not going to get the goal out of the exercise we want. We just want really clean reps. So I think if there are like 2 sets of like 8 to 10 to RP7 and it's standing. So it's not super heavy. So I don't know if there's any exercise that come to mind for you where you're like intentionally not writing RP9, RP10, or RP8 or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very similar to you in that. Like you said, I don't necessarily push the RDLs that hard. I don't think I've ever really pushed it past an 8,
Hmm.
just because, especially because most of the time my RDL work is on the secondary day. Obviously, there's going to be you have those people going on the primary day, but if I push that RDL day on the secondary day to 8 over an 8, you're going to come in probably a little bit more beat up coming into the primary. But the biggest thing I like to have there is just having them practice that movement. And if it's too heavy, I've found that a lot of the times the hinge will deteriorate because it's too heavy. They try to just focus on moving the weight rather than having a true hinge to it. And like that is why I don't push it as hard for a lot of people. But and then with another accessory as well, I don't push the incline double bench super hard that often, or I guess you can call it incline or like Smith machine dumbbell or a bench. I like to use that as an accessory sometimes in replacement of the dumbbell bench, but I don't push that as hard to like a 9 or 10 because there's a little bit more like front, down, and shoulder movement in there. I don't want to cause too much over like arching fatigue and that going into other bench days.
Hmm. You make a good point about like the RDL. I know this turns into an RDL podcast. But like even today I was doing RDL, my top set, like I just felt like it was, it felt good, it felt fine, but it wasn't like perfect. Like the quality just didn't feel amazing. But then the back down set was like, I don't know what it was, like 15 pounds lighter, like not much, just felt so much better. So there is a load component to that. Now, obviously, like we found with my deadlift, we kind of have to push that RDL, so it's fine to load it up. And again, the skill looks fine. Just didn't feel quite there. So like in cases like that, obviously like lowering the load, lower intensities, like when you're looking for movement quality, or like teaching, like obviously you're not giving an RP9. So I think the high RPs, like obviously for building muscle and whatnot, are needed or gonna kind of be a requirement, but the movement quality exercise, those exercises we're trying to build a skill with, we're not necessarily wanting to push hard. This kind of segues nicely though into my additional workload or filling the gap group. Um, and this also applies to like the health, right? Like we kind of talked about that with like my guys overhead press. But like when we're, filling the gap with accessory movements, what I've found, like there's gonna be your exercises like, a dip or a dumbbell press or a machine chest press with bench where maybe we are pushing it because we can handle it. And I think with something like a leg press, you have the camp or the group of people that, okay, I need you to push this because we need the volume and we need the stimulus and we need that intensity out of this to kind of get the legs to pop. But I also have times where it's like I write it like kind of moderate intensity or like something like a belt squat's common where it's like we're just filling a little bit of workload gap, a little bit more sets, but I don't need it to be hard. I don't need it to take away from what we're doing. It's just more so a little bit of easy workload to kind of continue to carry the adaptations like, a little bit farther along. Let's say on a secondary day, we find maybe going into the primary day, someone's a little flat. Maybe I give some leg press on the secondary day, but I don't need it to be super hard because that could start to take away from the primary. Maybe I start off by dosing it just, 1 or 2 sets to RP7, nothing crazy, or even like some ascending work or something. And that's all we really need. And then I can just leave it there. And that way it's not taken away. So I think there's a bit of a game with that, with the dosing of that. Do you ever find like you have people who like with like I find mostly with the lower body where you are intentionally just like, here's leg press at RP7, like take it chill, or 6 or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I wrote a block literally yesterday with something similar to that. What I did, I kind of overhauled this guy's microcycle because things were coming in a little bit flat. So that leg press we found was the day before his primaries deadlift. And with his primary deadlift, people sumo, and sometimes he comes in with his hips a little stiff because he squats pretty narrow. And then what I did on that secondary squat day, the day prior to that primary deadlift day, is I added in 2 sets of unilateral leg press, so like a single leg press. I think RPE 6 to 7, just to get slightly leg stimulus in, obviously, just to have like the quads get pushed a little bit. But with the unilateral aspect of it, it helps gets his hips a lot more loose.
Mhm.
So going into the primary deadlift day, he should come in feeling a lot better. This is an I guess project, not project. This is an action I've done for a lot of other people, and it's shown up extremely well. Just it's almost like a Bulgarian. I program them very differently, but in a sense of having that hip mobility and movement, I use that unilateral leg press because it's not nearly as fatiguing as a Bulgarian for other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's like a prime example of, okay, we need a little workload, but we don't or we need to get you through this movement pattern. Not from a teaching standpoint. Obviously, we're not teaching much with the single leg press, but like we need you through this movement pattern to kind of get you ready for this day, but it doesn't need to be hard. So that's where the blanketed like go hard on your accessories is yes, and I think a lot of lifters do need to hear that, but I think it is thrown around a lot. For the hot take, um I don't think this is super common, but I have seen coaches who do this with accessory movements and not programming them to an RPE, just leaving a blanketed do 3 sets of 8 on this accessory is very lazy, I think. Because you're missing the whole, like it just goes back to the conversation we just had for the last like 15 minutes. You're missing out on like what is the goal of the accessory movement? What does this need to look like? How does the athlete need to execute this? I'm assuming you agree. I don't think that's like a super hot take, but I've seen that a little bit where like if you're not prescribing in intensity, like what are we doing? That's just lazy in my opinion. So
I completely agree. Yeah. Just like you said, it's kind of piggybacking off what we just talked about. Is like some accessories don't need to be pushed, and some of them need to be pushed to absolute like failure per se. And one thing kind of to base off that a little bit too, I don't know if a lot of other coaches do this, but I think we do it. We'll put like a rep range for accessories.
mhm.
If you do straight sets, you put like 3 sets of 8 to 10 or 8 to 12. I know a lot of people will just put like 3 sets of 10. And if you're doing an accessory for 10 reps every single time for each set, you're likely not going to stay at that RPE or hit the same rep range, right? Because if you're
Yeah.
going to do 4 sets of 10 on tricep extensions, you're not going to do 100 pounds or whatever on each set. Because if that first set is RP 10 or 9, that by that fourth set, you're going to have to lower it to hit the rep range, to hit that 10 reps. So I like to program the rep range as well.
Mhm.
And that kind of builds off the not including intensity. So, but I don't know what you think about that.
No, I 100% agree. And I think that goes so like if you give someone like 4 sets of 8 and you even if you give it to an intensity, let's say 4 sets of 8 to RP 8, they're gonna stop at 8 reps whether they hit RP 8 or not. And they're probably more likely just going to just kind of mail it in, right? And this kind of goes back to making the athlete think about it. You give them an intensity, you give them a range. Now it's like, okay, well, I can do 12 reps, I can do 13 reps, I can do 14 reps, I can do 15 reps. Like I have a range here. It's got to be to this RP. So you give it kind of that AMRAP aspect to, okay, you're going to essentially do an AMRAP to this RP and we're trying to keep it, a load that falls within this range of reps. So yeah, that's huge too. I think that's the only time I won't do that is if I have an accessory movement that I'm almost treating like a top set of like a comp movement. Like one that comes to mind, like I've written before, and this is pretty rare that I do this, but like I might give like 1 set of 5 weighted dips. And then because I want the athlete to intentionally come in the next session, the next week, and push that set of 5 again, and then add a little more load and push that set of 5 again. That's rare that I do that, but otherwise, like for anything else, yeah, it's got to be a range. I think that's the best way to go about it. I guess like for RDL. I don't know how you think about it. I think about RDL in 2 ways. Think about it as a comp variation, or I think about it as an accessory. And kind of the reason I categorize it this way is my comp variations is okay, are we wearing a belt? Or are we doing it with a barbell? Because that's a very different exercise than are we doing it with dumbbells? Or are we doing it even with a barbell but no belt? I think those are just entirely different exercises in terms of how much workload you can kind of get in and how much how heavy and fatiguing they are. Um, so like with something like an RDL with a belt, where someone's maybe strapping it up, walking out of the rack, I'm probably like not I'm not writing that to a range, but yeah. Anything else? I agree. There was something else I wanted to say about accessories. I don't know. Did you have anything else you wanted to add with the hot? Oh, I remember now. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Go ahead, go ahead.
So we talked in the group chat, is writing of choice in your prescription in the programming lazy? And I think it's yes and no. So I think Eric, I can't remember who made this point. I think it was Eric or maybe Alex, but and I agree with this 1,000%. I don't think it's lazy if you're doing it for like one or two reasons, but like It's lazy if you write lats of choice, I think. To me, that's really lazy. Or like chest of choices. Like that, I mean,
Okay.
one, we're talking about the muscle group specific to a comp exercise. And there's so many different exercises. We can do, chest of choice could be the athlete might do dips one week, they might do chest press one week, they might do dumbbell press one week, they might do flies one week. Like they're all different exercises, like entirely different. But I think writing something like tricep extension of choice, probably not that big of a deal. Bicep curl of choice, probably not that big of a deal. I write a lot of the triceps and biceps of choice because I really just at that point I want people to kind of get in and just enjoy it. You give the opportunity to kind of mix it up because powerlifting is just very monotonous, and then people can kind of play around with different exercises. But like to me, like pretty much anything else probably should be actually writing an exercise in. But I don't know what your thoughts are with that.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. What I like to do a lot is say like an athlete will hit triceps or biceps twice a week on 2 different days. On one day, I'll put like a specific tricep variation. I'm like, okay, I want you to do tricep skull crushers. And then in the block overview, I say, I want you to do these skull crushers this day for X, Y, and Z reason. And then the next tricep day, like, okay, now that you hit that skull crushers for those specific regions, I'm allowing you to choose a tricep choice just to keep them a little bit more engaged and bought in. It's like, oh, they might hate tricep skull crushers. So that second day they can do their favorite tricep movements like quick cable pull down or something like that. So they'll have more fun with it essentially. And then what I will like I said like you said too like the shoulder movements of choice like dumbbell presses. I'll specifically put what movement to do. I don't like putting shoulder of choice or like front delt of choice just because there's so many different things and that could be maybe too fatiguing or understimulating. I will put like specifically, I want you to do like a dumbbell press, overhead press, or a dip or chest press, something like that. But like you said too, with the lats, I kind of do slightly the same thing. I will program a lat pull down, and then there's a couple people at this gym I train at. There's probably like genuinely 10 different lat pull down lat machines. I'll be like, okay, you can choose a lat machine of your choice. But if I know they go to like a different kind of gym that only has one or two different lats, I'll program for something specifically because I know different gyms have different machines and just want to keep people engaged that way. Plus, a different machine might be a little over or understimulating depending on how it's like set up.
Yeah. To go back to the shoulder thing. So if I'm writing like a overhead press, like I'm not writing, I guess, shoulders of choice. I'm giving people a pattern. So like I might put like side lateral of choice. So like okay, you have basically the options of like dumbbell, a machine, or like a cable, but it's all a side lateral. That's when I'll do that. And then like tricep extension of choice, again, kind of a pattern, and then bicep curl of choice, kind of a pattern. But yeah, I don't like the whole like you said, the whole muscle group quad of choice, go hit it. You know what I mean? Because there's so much that you could do. And a lot of exercises are going to have secondary movers and whatnot. Um, Kind of piggybacking off your point of like, okay, we have a lot of different machines and they're all different. Like I noticed this a lot I try to stick to the same machines just for myself, just um, kind of keeps me honest with the progression because it's like, okay, put 5 pounds on this exercise this week, like or 10 pounds or added a few reps. Like I know this is the exact same exercise I did last week on this day versus like I'll go to my other gym sometimes and like dude, the tricep extension like loading is entirely different because the cable system's different. So just makes it tough to kind of load things and progress things the way you want. So um yeah, that was a good point. Um did you have anything else you kind of want to cover with accessories, or we can kind of move into our last topic? Because I think this one we could yap on for a little bit too.
Yeah, I think we should be good there. We can move on to the last topic.
All right. Tips for people who are pressed for time. Alex inspired this idea. Um, so I have some, and I put a story post about it the other day. I'm gonna actually just pull it up and like read my points I made. Um, Let me see here. So this is obviously a very common issue with a lot of people, obviously, because we're not really getting paid to do this, so we probably don't have time to be in the gym for, you know, this is the right one. Yeah, probably don't have time to be in the gym all day long. So the points I brought up, and I don't know if you have any more, but the points that I brought up were so being creative with the programming is the first one. So like to me, I guess the starting with the lowest hanging fruit, um, just for the athlete to do before consulting with a coach or before changing the programming is um warm up times probably don't need to be super long. You probably don't need to warm up for 30 minutes before you get under the bar. I'm referring to warm ups prior to getting under the bar. And I think your warm up should be specific to what you need. Like for a long time, I was doing like 3 minutes on the treadmill, throw the knee sleeves on, and I'm squatting. Now I feel like I need a little bit more to kind of get going. But at the time, that's all I really needed. I didn't really need a whole lot of movement prep. Now I like to just run through a few different exercises, but nothing super fancy. It's mostly just to work up a sweat before getting under the bar. So like I'll do a little bit of light dumbbell overhead press, like 30-pound dumbbells, super light. I'll do some iliac rows, super light, like 70 pounds on the cables, like a set of 12 at like way sub 5 RPs, super easy. If I'm like deadlifting, I'll do some hamstring curls, I'll do some goblet, like it's like a goblet good morning with like a kettlebell. For squat, I like kettlebell squats. For bench press, I like just some band like tricep work, stuff like that, just to work up a sweat, get some blood flowing. But like it for real takes me 10 minutes or less. Like if even it, I could fly through it. It's very quick. Versus sometimes you'll see people you look over and they're rolling around on a foam roller for 40 minutes before they squat. It's like, do you need to do that? I'd argue probably not. Like, do you need to run through this whole circuit of like 7, 8 exercises? Probably not. I don't know. What do you think about that? I don't know what your warm-ups look like.
Yeah, my warm-ups are very, very quick. I'm quick. I'm kind of like the same how you used to be. I'll just walk on a treadmill for like 3 to 5 minutes and I'm good to go. Squat, deadlift, whatever. And for bench, I only do this now because I tore my pec, but I'll just do like incline push-ups just to warm up the pec if I'm just benching first. Or
All right, we're back. Wi-Fi troubles. All right. So you just pick back up where you left off, I guess.
yeah. So we're talking about like my warm-up routine, how it's not very long. But for like bench, all I really do is like it's some couple incline push-ups and then just like very, very light sub RPE 5 neutral grip dumbbells like 20s or 30s just to get the pec moving and get the blood flow and stuff like that. But like you said, with people pressed on time, especially for like my own athletes, I found that not necessarily timing their rest periods between sets, but just having to be conscious of it and not taking too long. Especially because like I know a bunch of college kids I coach, they'll complain, they'll be like, hey, I'm spending this much time in the gym and they only have like one compound movement of the day. So I'm like, how long are your rest times? So I have to let them know, be like, hey, pay attention to this. Plus you don't get cold and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you do that with any of your athletes.
Yeah. Well, real quick, you want to know who trains no warm-ups? When I trained with everyone in OKC, dude, we walked in there. Before I walked in the door, I was signing up like for the day pass, and like Andy and Andrew are like taking reps with the bar. It's like, dude, we just walked in the building, like no warm-up. And then I think like they went off and maybe did like one drill or something, but like that's the definition of no warm-up right there. They walked in and they had the bar on their back like within a minute. But with the warm-ups, that was my second point. Or with the timing of the rest periods, that was my second point. You probably don't need to rest. Like I'll see people working up to the top. So it's like, dude, you squat 4 reps. Like you don't need to rest between the bar and a red or 2 reps and 3 reps. Like just put the red on and go. You know what I mean? You could work up to a top set in like 15 minutes. It shouldn't take very long. I think in meet setting and stuff, like, when you're actually warming up at a meet, you probably want to take your time and not rush it. But like in the gym, like you don't, and Dave Wilson's even talked about this, but you don't need to rest between your warm-ups. Obviously last warm-up, maybe before that you rest. After your last warm-up, you probably want to rest a little bit. But like I see people warming up for top sets, it's like taking substantial amount of time between like a red and two reds or two reds and three reds. It's like, dude, you pull like 500 pounds. Like you don't really need to do that. So that's my opinion on that. Obviously, like if you have, if the closer to I guess your top set, the less warm-ups you or less likely you're gonna have like no rest time, if that makes sense. But that was my second point. I don't really have issues with people not taking too long and then not being able to get through everything or needing to kind of tell people, hey, shorten your rest times. I haven't had that issue, but like that definitely I can see that being a problem. And that's something I've been trying to address with my own training. It's just like, and I've been a lot quicker lately, just getting in and then warming up quickly and then getting through sets quickly and not taking too long. Because I think that, your mental kind of awareness of what's going on with training is going to stay higher just because like you're not in there all day and then like you're just going to stay warm, like you said. From a programming side of things, so that's kind of the two things that athletes can do. I think the programming side of things, I think the first one is again, next low hanging fruit would be cutting the fluff from your accessories. So I think sometimes like, especially for your non-specific stuff, like I'm probably less likely to pull out like the leg press for someone because that's pretty substantial in doing, like we talked about in driving the adaptations, carrying someone to the next session, whatever the case may be. But like something like a row, if I have you doing four sets of rows, it's probably not a big deal if I have you do two or three instead. It's probably not going to affect your comp movements. And if we just keep the intensity high, some might even argue that that's better anyways. So, something like that. I don't know if that's something you've had, but I know I have I've had clients who like I have a client he is really into like mountaineering and like hiking. So as he gets closer to these, we start to trim the fat out of some of his workouts, or we'll start to pulling out some of the extra accessory work just because like time is an issue. And then I had another client who just was working like an accounting job, like in the peak of tax season. It's like, okay, we probably don't need to do, I don't need to make you do four sets of lat pull downs and then into three sets of rows or something. Like we could probably just do like, one or two sets of one exercise, one or two of the other, keep the intensity high and keep it moving. But I don't know if that's something you've seen the need to do.
Yeah, I've definitely implemented that as well. But to go back a little bit on like warm-ups for timing too, I've seen a lot of people take, I guess, not optimal warm-ups. If they're like a 500 plus pound squatter, they'll go like one red, two red to like 150 and
Mhm.
three reds. I'm like, I think you can skip the yellow with two reds and a yellow and go straight to three, and you'll save a few minutes there when it comes to timing. Just taking slightly bigger warm-up jumps, definitely you can pile that on and get even more time or less time in the gym, I guess you could say. And that's something I've been implementing for myself at least. I take pretty big jumps. Like you can ask Devin, whenever I squatted 250 for a PR, my last warm up was 220. So
That's big.
yeah, but it's kind of like craftsmanship built a little bit,
Yeah.
but I don't do that like on the platform or anything. But it's just like last warm up jumps. I just think that saves so much time there. Because if using those hypothetical numbers, if I went to go 220 to 235 to 250 instead of 220 to 250, I probably save myself 5 to 10 minutes of rest time there. Obviously, it's not optimal for everybody, but it's just hypothetical numbers going into that.
Yeah.
But like you said, cutting the fluff out of certain accessories is really beneficial. I've done the same thing where I just put a few sets in compared to three or four just to save them a few minutes going there. And then what I've done as well, because biceps, I will sometimes just do one set of like a straight up superset of biceps just to give them an extra 5 minutes of leaving, right? If they really, really needed it. I've only done it once ever in the past couple of years, but that's something that I would definitely consider doing for biceps specifically, just because it wouldn't carry over much into the compound movement anyway.
Hmm.
And I don't want to completely skip biceps because I think it's just important for people to have fun when they lift too.
Muscle building.
Yeah, it's like
Um, yeah, I read a lot of my bicep work actually as a superset. Like if I have someone doing triceps and biceps, I just have them alternate it. It's not that big of a deal. Dumbbell or lateral raises and biceps is a good one to kind of do. Um, in my mind, I don't know if mine's programmed this way or not, but I superset my hamstring curls and biceps. Just I don't know if Devin wants me doing that or not. I think that might be written as a superset, but I was doing that before he wrote that. I also superset my lateral raises and bicep curls, and I know that's not written as that. It's not that big of a deal. But like you definitely don't want to be doing like, okay, bicep curls and then cable row or something. You know what I mean? Just because it's gonna obviously just take away from the performance of the row or whatever. But yeah, that's another one. Just being creative with the accessory programming. Lastly, I think the last low hanging fruit to me that like I'm more likely to really lean into is ascending sets. And the reason this is last is this starts to affect the comp exercises. But I think, after this, you could make the argument, okay, the next thing you would do if this isn't enough is actually cutting workload out. But that just starts to really change the programming like a lot. And I think at that point, like you're probably need to start expecting different levels of progress or whatever. But to me, ascending works relatively, depending on how you use it, is relatively low um, impact when you put that in. So the way I think about it is like if you have, let's say, a secondary day where it's a top set of five and then maybe a 3x5 back downs, right? If you write it as ascending, you give them maybe two ascending sets of five. You've knocked out one of your back down sets. There's what, at least 5 minutes off the squat working, at least, probably a little more. Um, you knock that out during the warm up. So you kind of get that done and over with before you even hit the top set. It's probably not going to take away from the top set performance much either. And I think this can be used also like not that I would maybe intentionally do it this way all the time, but like I'll have lifters where like the primary day is ascending work. Like I have this is how my squat's set up, but I have a guy who squats this way as well, where like his primary set or his primary squat day he'll do ascending sets. So it might be ascending threes or doubles, and then we flip them on the week four. So we pull the ascending sets out, give them the top set, I guess, on the week four of the block or the peak week of the block. That's something else you could do too, just with structuring ascending sets and still getting a lot out of that top set at the end of the block if you kind of get nerfed by the ascending sets. But to me, that's one. And especially putting it on the days where it's not that big of a deal to put it on. I think like the lower priority bench days, maybe a secondary or tertiary squat day if you're squatting 3 times a week. Secondary deadlift, I really like the ascending sets just like for sumo pullers or even conventional, where, okay, if we have a day of really light volume, just instead of giving you a top set of eight and then a back down set of eight or a top set of five and a back down set of five, it's like just do it ascending, just knock it out quick and be done with it. It's not that big of a deal. So I don't know if you've used ascending sets for that purpose, but to me, that's a little secret, I guess, secret utility of ascending work.
I've actually never thought about it using ascending sets in a way to crunch time. I use it in a very similar fashion, but it wasn't necessarily to crunch time. But that makes a lot of sense because what I've done as well is I'll just straight up do like a 3x4 ascending set. For this is for like a coordinary like bench day, the primary day going to the primary session. What I'll do sometimes is put like 3 sets of 4 ascending with a top single at 3 count or whatever to prime them for that primary day. And you can do that in genuinely less than 10 minutes if you're just going along because the load isn't heavy anyway.
Mm.
So that from a timing standpoint, I think that would help a lot. And what I have done as well for timing, I guess I have done it now that I think about it. Like you said, doing one ascending set with the top set with like a 2x5 back down rather than a 3x5. What I've done is do like 2 ascending sets into the top set and then just doing one back off set descending a little bit with a generated load, which is kind of the exact same thing. And
Mhm.
that close time. And this also helps the person because some people, whenever they do these ascending sets, I'll just tell them, hey, put like a 10 on the side. And you don't have to change the whole plate from like a 35 or a blue to a red. You can just put like a blue and a white, and that saves them like 2 or 3 minutes added up in the workout because they'll probably rest after they change the weight rather than just putting on that extra weight, making it quote unquote look funky, but the weight's still the same, and that helps timing for the ascending sets as well.
Dude, I did that today with bench. I had two reds for a 3x1, and then I had a red and a green. So 90 kilos for like a 3x8. So I knew I was going to need the green, and I always bench on the platform farthest away from the kilos just because I like that bench. So I usually try to bench there. And I was like, well, I don't want to put the yellow and the green away. And then because I hit the yellow as my like second warm up, and I was like, I don't want to put the yellow and the green away and then carry the red over it just to go back and get the green later and put all the reds away. So I was like, yellow's on. I'll hit the white, put the white on, so it'd be basically 110 for my last warm up, and then I just put a yellow and a green on to make 120, same as two reds. Did my 3x1 with that, and then just took the yellow off, put the green back on, did my sets, and so like again, a little way to save time. Not that I think that's like people should be intentionally trying to go in the gym and do that, but like there's another example as well, like you said. So um, yeah, obviously ascending sets have a ton of other utility, and that could be an episode on its own. I have an info post on that from a while back, but that's Devin started talking about that a little bit with me, and it kind of opened my eyes to like, okay, well, if this person needs this workout to be a little quicker or whatever, like we can make the tertiary bench day ascending, and it's probably not that big of a deal, or whatever the case may be. So obviously, I use them on heavier days too, like intentionally, not for time constraint purposes, but. Did you have anything else for lifters to give them like tips for working out faster or just people pressed for time?
One thing that, one final thing I guess I wanted to add is what I have done with Devin and I have actually done actually is on my primary squad day, that's my longest day of the week, which is a Thursday. And I was just getting completely cooked after primary squat and having like a heavy belt squat afterwards. So what we talked about was like after like the macro or something, we're like, okay, we can move that compound leg movement to a different day. Or I think that day we had the belt squat and then like hamstring curls. This is like 12 months ago when we first started. And then like, I started my job. So I think we moved the hamstring curls from Thursday to Saturday, just because that took a little bit longer after the belt squat. Just moving some of those non-primary accessories on different days that won't affect days after, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So just having to like as a coach, strategically move those non-primary accessories
Yeah,
around.
yeah. And that kind of goes into cutting the fluff and just moving the stuff that you're able to move. So I think that got through all the topics, and I think this is probably right at an hour. If not, it's real close. Um, give or take a few minutes. So where can people find you? Because you've got your new Instagram up as well.
Yeah, yeah. Y'all can find me at my Instagram. It's gonna be tylerlongraj.lifts. My last name is going to be spelled a little weird, so it'll be Tyler LUANGRAJ dot lifts. That'll be my Instagram, and then everything else with my brand Prevail Performance will be in my bio, and just anything of that nature for contact information in the bio.
YouTube too, right?
Yes, sir. I have a link in my bio for all YouTube videos and coaching inquiries and all of that, like a link tree, kind of like how you have.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'll link it all in the description, so it'll all be down there, and people or yeah, I mean it'll be linked or at least like with the ads and all that. So, alrighty, sir, appreciate you coming on. Uh, that'll be it for this episode.
Okay.